The Survivalists is Team 17's latest offering on the Nintendo Switch, and as the title suggests, it's a survival game that feels like a cross between Terraria and Stardew Valley. The question is it a born survivor or perhaps all washed up? Let's find out. The game begins in proper with a minor storytelling segment that feels straight out of Cliché 101. You're shipwrecked on an island, and in all honesty, it's self-referentially basic, and you'll unlock other story segments in the form of short diary entries which you'll find scattered across the island, or rather islands. And there are a number of different biomes as well as temples to explore, and as you'd expect, there's some procedural generation that goes into determining exactly where and when you'll find these diary entries. What I will say about them is the text was a little bit small for my liking. However, I tend to sit rather close to the TV. It may be a tiny bit of an issue for some in handheld, although it really isn't a huge part of the game. In terms of the gameplay, as you'd expect, it's a survival game, which can be played solo, offline, or you can join friends locally or through online play. There are several games in this genre already that do it very well, so it's going to need a few tricks up its sleeve, and the first and foremost of these has to be the monkey mimic system. Yeah, that like as in, you know, monkeys. In this title, what they've cleverly done is essentially allowed you to program simple scripts. By holding the left trigger down, you can tell one of your monkey followers to observe your actions, and upon the pressing of the trigger again, they'll try and replicate as best they can. For example, you might be hoovering up some of the rocks in the area, and then they'll do exactly the same, and they'll just go picking every item up that they can find. It can be really useful, and it mitigates some of the frustrations that come from the often lethargically slow pace that survival games can tend to lean towards. In addition to this, they'll gradually improve their ability to do these tasks, leveling up, which was a nice touch. As far as your character goes, you can customize the look to an extent, as well as give them a completely unique an original name, like Mark, yeah. But it's that clever implementation of the monkey system that really stood out to me. It's not perfect, and it's certainly not without its flaws, but you can actually do quite a bit with this system, such as training up several monkeys and having them attack dummies to fight alongside you. In essence, building your own Planet of the Apes. It takes a bit of getting used to, and in all honesty, I don't think I really utilized them as well as I could have, but the possibilities here are quite extensive. As far as the basic survival gameplay goes, you'll be able to craft a number of items from the local flora and fauna, such as an axe head from a rock which can be used to knock down trees and thankfully break other items. The parts that you gather from these are shown at the bottom of your screen, and depending on which ones you're holding, it will gradually expand your crafting potential. Now once you've built a workbench, this grows even more, and new recipes aren't learnt. You don't have to do anything in particular other than owning the specific ingredients required in their development, which is a nice touch, but potentially means that you're going to unlock everything quite quickly. But there are quite a lot of secrets here. Once you've built up your ship, you'll be able to sail away to other islands, upon which you can settle, build new bases, and try and defend yourself from attacks and raids which happen from time to time and can be a bit of a pain in the arse. Some of the biomes will do your character damage, such as the hot lava plains or the fly-infested swamps. There's a risk and reward mechanic here that I quite liked because they usually have some good or more rare items for you to find. Buildings are constructed through a blueprint screen. From here, you can place down your different blueprints, the parts of which you'll need to gather and place within them, and then use a multi-tool which range from standard up to a much better version to complete the build. Very similar to something like my time at Porsche, if you ever played that game. To save your game, a la Minecraft, you'll need to build a bed and then sleep. The beds you get can gradually be improved to improve your stamina, which can be seen down in the corner of your screen here. Your health bar is shown over on the left, and it's actually split into two segments. One determines your hunger, while the other your overall health. And if it's fully depleted, then you will fall unconscious. But I've got to say, as you know, I do enjoy survival games, and I haven't actually died yet. But that's not to say the title's easy. On the contrary, combat is downright challenging. You can perform a number of swings dependent on the stamina that you currently have, or you can hold the button down to do a more powerful attack. There's a dodge roll which also can function as a counter attack, if you can time it just right, but it never felt quite right to me. There's a slight input delay intentionally, but it's there to all of your actions. When you press the sprint button, there's a momentary pause before your character sprints. When you swing your sword, again, a tiny little pause. Arrows and bows were much better, and I did enjoy the way you could hold the button down to aim them, but the game will take a bit of getting used to. It has a very distinctive style and feel, but the temple runs feel suitably challenging, and going it alone can be quite a daunting affair. This is where setting up a bed right at the entrance and saving your game is probably a good idea. Throughout your adventures, you'll discover other inhabitants of these islands. Many of them will be hostile and attack you on sight, and there are a number of hidden discoveries to make, as you would hope, such as fulfilling the wishes of these totems, who will then bestow upon you a hidden chest, which you'll need to bash open to retrieve the goods. There is a secret shop that pops up every now and then, the owner of whom will offer you a variety of different items, but allow you to sell your own. It's a real relief when you find him, as he'll very often provide food, upgraded weapons, and the keys to the ends of the different temples. Other than the biomes themselves, which are very varied, the next real aspect to consider is the wildlife that shares this land with you. There are tons of different animals and creatures dotted about the world, and some of these will be essential to your survival. I found it really important to build a bow and arrow as quickly as possible, as those pesky rabbits are just too fast otherwise. But there's everything from deer to stags who will attack you, and even large sharks who I was able to cheese with a little tactic called stand on the shore and shoot them in the face with an arrow. There's a strange euphoria that would upset every vegan as your prey explodes into several piles of meat. These can be cooked up on a fire, and as with every other crafting aspect, more recipes become available dependent on the items you hold in your hand. One aspect that I haven't been able to go into a great deal is the cooperative elements, and I really feel like this is where the game is probably at its strongest. The world is a daunting place solo, and having someone along for the ride certainly and surely would make it easier and more exciting. When I dived down into the temple spelunking for treasure, having another adventurer at my back would have been most welcome. What I will say is I would have preferred perhaps a few more crafting recipes than what's on offer, but I would have said exactly the same thing when I first played Terraria, and the developers did exactly that. The same can be said for Minecraft. It's a really solid first outing. It feels good to play. Perhaps I'd tweak the controls a little bit if I had my own way in terms of this slight delay that I mentioned, but it's very good fun. Overall for me, gameplay scores 18 out of 20. The controls are remarkably clever with the monkey system, and functionally everything they've chosen to go with makes sense, such as the dodge rolls and the counter attacks, but personally I'd remove that slight input delay when you sprint. Controls for me score 16 out of 20. The game visually reminds me of Stardew Valley. It's not an exact replica of that aesthetic, but it has a certain charm to it. On the one hand, at times it looks like a classic top-down pixel art title, whereas at others, there are hand-drawn elements that almost have a cartoony, cel-shaded aspect to them. There's some punchy colours and good contrast in the scenery, and while not overly complex, the environments lend themselves to the feeling that you are indeed abandoned on a tropical island. The procedural generation tends to veer on the side of crowding areas with flora and fauna, meaning that you have to knock areas clear and make your own space and your own mark on the land. I liked that a lot. And while I always like to customize my own character, it did feel like they could have gone a little further in that area. But renaming and customizing your troop of monkey friends was pretty cool. One area which is a touch lacking are the different variety of weather effects. In my entire play session, which was around about 10 or 12 hours, I never got rained on. I mean, I don't know if it's not there or what, but it just never happened. I also saw no snow, and weather in general was pretty static. I loved the soundtrack, and as the game has an ongoing day-night cycle, it shifts quite dramatically at night time, becomes much more melancholic, and I found the overall direction of the music was really on point. If you think to your favourite titles, there's always either one piece of music or one environmental sound that sticks in your head. And for me, it was the nighttime shift and the real mood change that music provided here. Sound effects are pretty basic, but they're decent enough. Some of them are functional, allowing you to tell when enemies are in the area or if a particular puzzle is available, and that works well. In terms of performance, everything's running nice and smoothly. I didn't notice any major stutters or issues in that department, and as you'd hope, the game is fully Switch-Lite compatible. The only issue some players may have is text size being a touch too small for them. Overall for me, I give the visuals 17 out of 20. And as far as the audio goes, I really enjoyed it. I give it 18 out of 20. I feel like Team 17 are onto a winner here, and that starts from the price, which is £21.99 here in the UK, or your regional equivalent, and it feels absolutely on point. It's a very polished package, and the inclusion of the co-op mode adds an incredible amount of longevity. There's a physical available as well, which is always good for you collectors, and a reasonable download size. Overall, I give value 17 out of 20. Another day, another survival game where you're washed up on an island, but this time round, a pleasant surprise. Survivalists is an excellently made game that could have a massive following. It scores a SwitchUp score of 86%. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoy the look of this one, if you picked up the demo before launch and tried it out. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time. Oh, and a big thanks to our patrons who always support us. We really appreciate it. Keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!